Today, there are over 100 million citizens in the EU age 65 or older. That's a fifth of the total population. In just 30 years, that number will reach 149 individuals, which means that in 2050, EU citizens age 65 or older will make up almost 1/3 of the population. At the same time, we also live longer. In 2010, the life expectancy of a child born in the EU was 80 years. In 2019, that number had risen to 82 years. Healthy aging is a key to a sustainable European society. But how do we measure healthy aging? Is it quality of life? Is it the level of pensions? Or is it access to the internet? These are some of the things we will be discussing today on this discussion, Aging in Europe from North to South. Before we begin, I would like to extend the floor to one of the people who made this possible, the organization that made it possible, European Liberal Forum, and one of their board members, Marco Mariani, who will be speaking and greeting us on behalf of ELF. Il tuo turno, vai avanti.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you so much also for your Italian. Good morning and welcome to this seminar promoted by the European Liberal Forum with the support of Svenska Bildningsförbundet. First of all, thank you for taking time out and being here today. My name is Marco Mariani and I'm a member of the board of the European Liberal Forum. For those who do not know us yet, the European Liberal Forum is the political foundation and the think tank of the ALDE party, the party of Liberal and Democrats. And we are working across Europe with 47 member organizations to test new ideas for a liberal future in a united Europe. As Ted just said, today's webinar is dedicated to the launch of ELF's new publication, Aging in Europe from North to South. There are very interesting topics. When it comes to aging in the population, this gives us the chance to highlight the possibility that the welfare provides for people and the importance of cooperation at the European level. I mean that we have the opportunity to provide for increasing social, economic, and territorial cohesion. And this gives to ELF the chance to advocate very important fields such as the healthy aging, labor market participation and productivity, and the access to services and facilities. So today we have very motivational speakers, so I can't wait to hear that. I pass the floor back to Ted. Enjoy the seminar.
Grazie, Marco. Thank you very much. And thank you for those kind words. We are today located in many, many parts of Europe. And Anna and I, who is the head author of the report, we are sitting here in Vaasa, in the sunniest city in Finland, some 400 kilometers north of Helsinki. It's approximately -10 degrees. So if you're located somewhere southernmore in Europe, I hope you trust and you will enjoy your sunshine and your warm weather there as well. Anna holds, or Dr. Forsman, as I should say, holds a position as Associate Professor in Health Sciences here at Åbo Akademi University in Vaasa. And her research interests include mental health promotion across the lifespan and its social factors and psychosocial mechanisms, especially among older age groups. Anna, would you like to tell us why this topic of research is so important and some of the background to this report, Aging in Europe from North to South?
Thank you, Ted, and warmly welcome everyone also from my point of view here in Vaasa, Finland. It's been a pleasure to write this report together with our authors, and we're very happy with the end result, and we're so much looking forward now to together discuss these topics that we've identified as crucial when it comes to policy making and when it comes to safeguarding aging well in Europe and various parts of Europe. And this is important, I would say, mainly because we have these demographic trends that are so very clear, and we see that we're aging and that we have a large proportion of our population in Europe that are over 65 years old. And we have, as authors of the report, we've tried to emphasize that this is a success story of Europe, not a problem, or it should not be seen as a burden. But therefore, we also need to highlight how we can protect healthy aging and how we can age well in our future Europe, and to really try to highlight and flag up the success stories and the support factors of healthy aging. So therefore, this report was a pleasure to deliver and write, but it will also be very interesting now to discuss and compare our success stories from various parts of Europe.
And some of the things we will be discussing today is, among others, digitalization, pensions, and the question of what is healthy aging. We have a very, very accomplished panel of both experts and policymakers. And one of the policymakers who was supposed to be on this panel, Dragos Pislaru, the Romanian member of the European Parliament, he is unfortunately unavailable to attend due to a scheduling conflict. He has to sit in plenum and vote on important issues in the EU today, but he sent a video greeting. Dragos Pislaru is a Romanian economist and politician, and since 2019, he has been serving as a member of the European Parliament. He also held the position of Minister of Labour, Family, Social Protection and the Elderly in Romania from 2016 to 2017, and he is a member of Freedom, Unity and Solidarity Party and of the European political family Renew Europe. Here is his greeting.
Hello from the European Parliament. My name is Dragos Pislaru. I'm a member of Renew Europe and delighted as always to answer the call of the European Liberal Forum to debate a very important policy topic, aging. I unfortunately will not be able to be with you live at this session because there is a plenary and there's a lot of things going on. But what is actually important is to pass a couple of reflections on the topic of today. First of all, as liberals, it's very important to ask ourselves, how do we imagine our seniors, our aged people to be like in the future? And what we as liberals would like to have is independent people. We'd like to have active aging, people that even after 65 would be able to cater themselves on their own and not being dependent on the public administration for their wealth and for their well-being. So in order to achieve that, we need to do at least three things, or to be concerned about at least three things. Let me start with the first one. First one is obviously related to an income, a revenue that people over 65 should actually have. And obviously, this is a topic of mostly about the pension systems. What we need to have is a pension system that will be able to reflect the demographic challenge, where the dependency rate is actually growing and the life expectancy is increasing. So in order to do that, obviously, we should try to be sure that we have a sustainable pension system. And obviously, a balancing in the three pillars of potential pension system would be great, because the public sector will not be able in its entirety to take care of that. Because what we need to take in consideration is what's well reflected in the study done by the European Liberal Forum, is that you need also to take into consideration intergenerational aspects. We cannot borrow money today and hugely increase the government debt, putting thus a burden on the young generation to be able to pay the pensions of the aged people. So this being said, I think that one of the topics for us liberals is to be sure that we are actually looking at a sustainable pension system. I myself, I'm a rapporteur on the pan-European personal pension product. It's an initiative related to Pillar 3, where you have a voluntary contribution to pension funds, and the whole point is to democratize these particular products so that every person would actually be able across Europe to contribute. And that's actually one of the things that I think is part of the solution. Now, the second part is obviously about the health of the aged people. We would like to have active aging. That means, you know, people in their seniority to be able to still be involved, not to be marginalized, and consider that their duty or their participation in society is done. And in order to do that, you need to be able to ensure the proper care for this segment of the population. Now, during the pandemic, we've seen how badly hit the elderly have been, and we've seen that both in institutionalized care, but also outside of it, we had quite a few problems with this particular demographic segment. And what we need to do is to ensure that we are going to develop the care industry, and this means that we need a public and private cooperation, so that we will actually be able, first of all, to have a lot of prevention going on in the health system, so that we will be able to increase the well-being of elderly people, and to prevent across the lifespan, you know, the development of acute maladies. So what we need to do is actually to be sure that the care industry would actually be developed across Europe. And that's actually an amazing opportunity for jobs. This is one particular sector that is not that badly affected by AI and automatization. I think that this should actually be a very good source for well-paid jobs across Europe, and also at the same time reaching the goal of having active aging and healthier people. And thirdly, for us liberals, it's very, very important to take into account the big transformations of tomorrow. We are, you know, the advocates and the pioneers in terms of promoting the digital transformation. And when we talk about digital transformation, already all the time we need actually to focus on the digital divide, so that we are not going to leave people behind from a digital literacy perspective. Yeah, I mean, it will be completely useless if we manage to digitalize the public administration, the services, and everything around. But then to have a good chunk of our population, a good part of the elderly population that will not actually be able to use the technology because they don't have the digital skills to do that. So in order to be sure that we have an inclusive approach, and we would like to have this digital transformation as the new normality in the future, we need to be sure that we are not going to neglect the elderly in this particular equation. So this being said, these are, you know, three of the main reflections. So one, obviously, it's related to the pension system. Second, the care system, and third, to the digital transformation and digital inclusion. I mean, these are well reflected in the work of the European Liberal Forum. And I'm sure that by being careful and studying all these things and looking at the case studies, we would be able to reach the goal of the liberals that have suggested, that we will have active and healthy elderly people involved in the society and not marginalized. This being said, again, many thanks to the European Liberal Forum for inviting me to say a few words about that, and I will always be alongside you to debate, but also to represent you in the European Parliament on any policy issues that are stemming out from your work. Thank you very much, and I wish you a fruitful debate.
Thank you to the Romanian member of the European Parliament for this greeting. And he brought forward the three themes that we will be discussing today, that is healthy aging, that is pensions, and that is also digitalization. And on the panel today are very distinguished experts and policymakers, and I would like to present them for you. Let's start off. I already presented Dr. Anna K. Forsman, who is the head author And I would like to present Mr. Michael Fuchs from Austria, who is a co-author of the report. Michael holds a master's degree in social and economic sciences and is a researcher at the European Center for Social Welfare Policy and Research in Vienna since 2000. He has coordinated and has been engaged in several international and national research projects related to employment policies, social protection systems, and social inclusions. Herzlich willkommen, Michael.
Hello, good morning.
I would also like to present Mr. GianMarco Bovenzi from Italy, who is one of the co-authors of the report. GianMarco is an attorney with a master's degree in law from the University of Rome. He further achieved a postgraduate master's degree in forensic sciences at the University of Rome in 2018 and an LLM in American law at the Syracuse University College of Law. Welcome, GianMarco.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ted. Thank you.
And finally, I would like to introduce Barbro Westerholm, who is a member of parliament in the Swedish Riksdag and also a part of the AGE platform, who we are cooperating with today. And I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Barbro, who had some trouble connecting, but you finally found the online seminar. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, your mail with the link was lost in my spam mail, so it took some time to find it. Thank you.
Better late than never. And Barbro is a Swedish politician from the Liberal Party. She has been a member of the Swedish Parliament since 2006 and was previously also a member from 1988 to 1999. And in 1979, as General Director of the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare, she had homosexuality dropped from the list of mental health diseases. Thank you for that. And in 2009, she was awarded the Nordic Public Health Prize for work to fight against the discrimination against the elderly. This is our panel today, and let's start off with the first topic, digitalization. When it comes to internet usage and access to computers, there are big differences between Northern and Southern Europe. In 2008, close to 100% of Bulgarians aged 65 to 74 reported that they had never used a computer. 10 years later, that number had gone down by close to 20%. Meanwhile, in Sweden, close to 30% of citizens aged 65 to 74 had never used a computer in 2008, and 10 years later, that number had dropped to just a few percent. I would like to direct the first question to Barbro. How come Sweden has been so good at digitalization, the digitalization of older citizens?
I think the organizations for older people, like PRO and the others, have worked very hard in order to get older people to use the possibilities with digitalization. But what we see that even if quite a number have a laptop and so on, systems change, and when you are a seldom user, so to speak, all these technical changes cause problems. You have to have technical assistance. But then now we see during the pandemic that people got invitation for vaccination via their laptops and should use bank ID, and then they get stuck. So I think now when we are offered vaccination, we will get ordinary letters by post and then use our mobile phones or telephones in order to get a time for the vaccination. So, and one I want to mention, we have a woman who in her 90s started to teach people of her age, and she is teaching at the age of 107 years to get more and more to use their laptops. But some don't own a laptop, others have laptops, but a problem is when systems change all the time, they can't cope with it, so it's stuck in their bookshelves. So we have a lot to do in Parliament in order to get resources for teaching, but also that in municipalities, there should always be a person to turn to in order to get advice how to deal with all these new complications. That's my start.
Thank you. GianMarco, if we look at, that's the situation in Sweden. What do you think, what's the situation like in Italy when it comes to older citizens and computers?
Well, unfortunately, the situation in Italy is not that happy, I would use this term, because there is actually a problem on the access to digitalization. This is probably to be, the reasons for this are to be accorded to a lack of digital literacy among the elder, and not only among the elder. In some areas of our country, mostly speaking about the rural areas or outside the city centers, there's really a problem of computer literacy and digitalization. So obviously this gap is even keeps on increasing when it comes to the elder, and basically so there's a lack of information here in Italy, because the institutions and the policymakers do not actually inform well this part of the population what are the advantages of digital literacy. And so actually the situation in Italy is not that good. I would say there's a lot to be done, and hopefully resources will be further invested in this area in Italy. This is the current situation actually here. And also digitalization helps preventing some kind of symptoms of depression, and it is actually a social inclusion lever. So there would be an issue that should be dealt with in Italy, and policymakers should focus on it in our country. Thank you.
Michael, what's the situation in Austria?
So I hope I don't spoil the agenda, because I saw also Maria Valamova is online, and she wrote actually the Austrian chapter on the potential of older people. So maybe she knows much more on digitalization than me. I could say a few words, but maybe if it's okay, I give quickly the floor to her, because she's much more experienced on digitalization in Austria.
Of course, Maria Varloma is also a co-author of the report, Aging in Europe from North to South. Please go ahead. What's the situation in Austria, Maria?
Hello, a bit unexpected. So the situation in Austria is really clearly divided by the age groups. If we can see the younger generations being somehow engaged in the digitalization and being on one side of the digital divide, people aged 65, 70 plus are definitely on the other side of the digital divide, which really raises problems with their access to vital services, which was exacerbated by the COVID pandemics, as shopping, access to telemedicine, access to social interaction and communication, and to government services were provided via the internet, which really raised the question with the intergenerational fairness and the accessibility to vital goods and services.
Thank you. Isn't this a wonderful world where we can sort of jump into a discussion regardless of where we are? Anna, I would like to ask the question from you as well. What's the situation with digitalization in Finland? Are our numbers as good as in Sweden?
I would say so, yes. We have currently we have around 25% of the people aged 65 years or older that are not internet users, which is a quite low number. But of course, it's not enough, because these 25% of the older adult population will miss services or opportunities for using services and other resources that are available online. So it's a democratic issue. And I would also say that we need to work on the connection issues and structures when it comes to Wi-Fi, and these very important part of online activities, because we know in the northern part of Europe that it is not so I mean we have high rates of digitalization, but we have remote areas that are not so connected. And when it comes to households with older people, we know that Wi-Fi connections and these important structural resources are lacking. So this is also an issue that we need to compared to or in addition to the other important topics here, but structures and infrastructures when it comes to digitalization is important to address.
And I know that you were personally involved in a project on getting digital access to older citizens here in the Greater Vasa region. Would you like to tell me a bit about that project, please?
Oh, yes, with pleasure. Yes, the Aging Online project was an innovation project where we actually created a new online service together with older people and for older people here in the northern part of Europe. And we had collaborations with institutions in Sweden and here in Western Finland. And we found out that in order to really create services that are suitable and are experienced as meaningful for older people, we need to involve them in the whole innovation process. So this was one very important lessons learned for us. And the other findings that we would like to highlight from that project is that we need to get rid of these stereotypical views when it comes to older people and the use of internet, because we have 80 plus citizens that are really advanced when it comes to internet usage and online services. And then we can also have 60 years or 65-year-olds that are not interested at all and can't see any point of using the internet. So stereotypical views when it comes to aging and digitalization is also something we need to work on.
Barbro, I would like to lead a follow-up question to you on this. You said there was one thing you said that I reacted to, the fact that systems keep on changing. And when we look at modern technology, for instance, mobile phone manufacturers, they kind of want us to update our phone every 2 years. Same thing with laptops and internet sites change. And it's a very, very rapid world where we change. Whereas older generations sometimes may tend to think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that once you've bought an appliance, it should last a bit longer. How do you feel about this, the rapid update of machines and operating systems and websites?
That is a real problem, because you're right. If you are a retired person and you invest a lot of money into a laptop, and then you think it should last for many, many years, and then will all these technical changes and that you have to rely on buying a new one in 2 years' time, then you give up. And I can see quite a number of people who don't buy a new one, and therefore we work in order to get people to have someone to turn to, at least to update the laptops they have. And it becomes more and more important now when much of the hospital care we had is now moving into people's bedrooms and drawing rooms, and much of the consultation, many of the consultations are meant to be done via a digital system. And this is also a challenge now, how to handle this with the technical changes, because I believe in this change, that you could stay home and not be kept in hospital longer than needed if you can take care of many things at home, like blood pressure measuring and blood gas measuring and so on and so forth. So technical assistance in a in an easy way is absolutely necessary.
Barbro, I would like to raise a follow-up question to that as well. And now I direct this question to you as a policymaker. When it comes to bridging the gap between Northern and Southern Europe, because listening to the things that have been said here today, in the Nordics, we seem to be fairly well equipped for the digital process of older Europeans and older citizens, whereas in the southern parts of Europe, not so much. As a policymaker, what would you instruct policymakers in for instance, Italy or Greece or Bulgaria or Austria, for that matter, to think about when it comes to setting up guidelines and rules for the digital process?
I think in exchange of information experience is most important. And this is what we are doing in Age Platform Europe. But I can also see that the EU Commission has an important part to play. We are right now reading the Green Book on older people. And I think there, following that review, in that review, we should put forward the need to exchange experience about digitalization, how to have easy solutions. I mean, this is something which countries have to decide for themselves. But to exchange information experience is very, very important, and to have meeting places for that. And then to involve politicians in this experience exchange is important, because questions concerning older people are not always that prioritized in the political family as they should be. Age discrimination is a problem in all countries, more so maybe in some countries, but to prioritize these questions, that's very important. As someone said, it's a democratic issue of great, great importance.
We're talking about digitalization, and I have one final question, and I'm going to direct this one to GianMarco in Italy. When it comes to the public discussion, public debates, political debate in Italy right now, how high up is the question of digitalization in general, and in particular the digital process for older citizens?
Well, I have to admit that in Italy, the public debate on digitalization is something that is actually debated, but it's always done in a very abstract way. So basically, there is never a concrete problem of digitalization. So what does this mean? That basically in the public debate, there are talks about the need of enhancing, for example, the Wi-Fi network, or for enhancing the tools at everybody's disposal, and especially when it comes to older generations. So there is a focus that within the public debate on digitalization, because it is actually a perceived flaw in the Italian system. And it is even more when we consider the older generation. Just to give you some data, for example, in Italy, only 34% of people over 65 years use the internet, and the EU average is 52%. So these data are actually quite dramatic, I would say. And moreover, the digital literacy, also considering that it may enhance of the 50% the capacity, as I was saying before, for older generation to prevent symptoms of depression, for example, it should be even dealt with even more. Policymakers should focus more on this topic. So yes, I mean, digitalization is something that policymakers talk about within the broader context of the public debate, but probably not enough, given the extension of the issue in our country. So this is what I would actually say. Still, networks are insufficient, and so insufficient are, for example, the services that the government provides for every citizens in general, and especially for older generations, which are not that much safeguarded in this regard.
Thank you very much. I think it's time to wrap up this topic on digitalization and move on to the next topic, which is pensions. And Barbro actually said something about the fact that when you are an older citizen, you invest in an expensive computer, expensive phone, and then 2 years later you might have to buy a new one, and that will drain your resources. So let's move on to the question of pensions. And here, this is also something that Dragos Pislaru, MEP, brought up in his video greeting, the fact that how should we pay for it all, especially as the aging population is growing older, and there will be a larger portion of that of older Europeans in the future. And here I would like to direct the first question to Michael Fuchs, who I know is specialized in pensions, and I've talked to him many times and he loves to talk about pensions. So Michael, how do we finance the pension systems in the future? The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very good question, and I at least partly agree, of course, with the colleague from the European Parliament that this is a big challenge in the future, given now that the baby boomer generation is going to retire very soon. And then we have less active contribution payers, and we have more pensioners. So this is really a difficult problem. And in Austria, there's always the question, can we still afford to pay the pensions in the future? But I think the question is wrong, because you can always afford to pay the pension. The question is just, what are the consequences? You finance them, but then in the worst case, you have to crowd out other expenditures. You have not budget left for education. You have no budget left for infrastructure, or you increase the public debts. And so I think these all are no sustainable solutions. So somehow you have to think of pension reforms still to happen in the future. If I now draw on the situation in Austria, I think here the problem is in Austria we have at the one hand very high expenditure. On the other hand, we have comparably high annual accrual rates and almost the highest theoretical replacement rates in Austria. So in principle, the pension system is generous, but on the other hand, the redistribution by the pension system is very low. So if you don't have a continuous employment career, if you have some spells of childcare, unemployment, then also in Austria, you see that many pensioners are not far away from the poverty line. So also here's the question. On the one hand, you have very high expenditure, but on the other hand, the redistribution is low and still you have some kind of social problems or poverty problems. We have a lot of other problems in Austria. For example, we have a very high gender pension gap, which has many reasons. I do not want to go into detail, but this is also a problem for the future. And also Austria is one of the last countries where the standard pension age for women will be increased to the standard pension age for men, which I think this late equalization is also not to the advantage of women. But on the other hand, of course, I think the biggest problem, because a pension reform makes only sense if you really can keep the older persons in employment. So it's not a goal per se. So it can only work if you really manage that there is enough work available and that unemployment rates are low, because then on the other hand, then they would not receive a pension, but then they would receive an unemployment benefit. So this is not a solution. And another problem in Austria is, of course, we have still a relatively high inflow in these early retirement paths. And still it's also a kind of back and forth strategy by the government. So partly they are pushed back, but on the other hand, the new possibilities are open. So this is also a very bad strategy, because you somehow force people who still are able to work to retire, or at least you give them the incentive to retire. And then maybe I stop here, not to be too long. Another problem is, of course, still the relatively high inflow into the invalidity pension systems, because so far we did some kind of measures to reduce this inflow, but at the moment is still the problem that actually, as I said before, these people do not work, so that we are just transfers from pension receivers to receivers of rehabilitation benefits or sickness benefits. But of course, still we're here relatively far away from a sustainable solution.
I'm a bit curious, especially coming from a Nordic country, I'm a bit curious about what's the background for separate pension ages for men and women. Could you just slightly open that up for us?
Yeah, this has, on the one hand, some historical reasons. So this was with the exception of civil servants, where there was always an equal pension age between men and women, but historically we always had, also the pension age of women was always 5 years lower. At the moment, 60 years for women, 65 for men. And it was also seen in the political discussion, although I think it's completely wrong, as some kind of an exchange for the disadvantage of women on the labor market, on the career breaks due to childcare, to care for elderly, that on the other hand, you give them the possibility to retire early. But I think this is some kind of a paradox, because also we know that women have a higher life expectancy, and if you somehow, and still they can, at the moment it's not so that they can be dismissed, or at least they can appeal against, as if the employer wants to dismiss them because they reach the pension age, then they can now appeal against. But still, there's still this culture and this tradition, and I think it's really to the disadvantage of women, because they, let's say 5 years before the pension age, and for them it's already 55, then they're excluded from some kind of advances in their career track. They may be excluded from certain increases in the salary, and in the end they have, in addition to their already on average lower contribution years due to childcare, due to care to elderly, also they lack up to 5 years of employment and contribution years because they retire earlier. So I think it's really a big problem. But in Austria, there was always the compromise was that this will be only increased between 2024 and 2033. So only in 2033, the pension age is equaled. And the argument was always the situation on the labor market is generally bad for elder people and especially for elder women. But I think at least we should have tried to make this kind of transition period a bit earlier. So I think all in all, this politics is in addition to the disadvantage of women.
Thank you. Anna, what's the situation with pensions in Finland?
We have flexible pensions in Finland, and same for men and women. And I'm not an expert when it comes to pensions as a researcher, but something that that's been high on the agenda, the political agenda in Finland, is the older workers and how to prolong the working careers and how to also create an inclusive labor market. So this is something that we're working on, but maybe also we could be much better here to really see the possibilities to prolong our careers and also to include older workers and try to encourage them to stay at work if they would like to do so, because we have these maybe some still we have these views of people over 60 that they can't contribute to the labor market, but yes they can. And this is something that that is quite in my opinion at least this is a very prioritized topic when it comes to our political agenda, to also to solve the questions when it comes to finances, because I think if we prolong the careers we can also make sure that people that really need to step out from the labor market, that we can enable that and we can support that also.
We actually collaborated on another report on aging at the workplace, and I was kind of shocked to know that in Nordic comparison, we have the shortest careers. We do the shortest work careers in Finland in general, or on average. A Finnish person works for 39 years, and compared to, for instance, Iceland, that's they work for 45 years, and in Sweden, people stay on average for 42 years in the labor market. How come we want to retire so early in Finland?
Oh, this is a really good question. I would say that we have traditions and maybe a culture where we're used to doing it like this. That while we're getting older, we are also entitled to step out of the labor market and maybe to disengage from society. But I think it's traditions and views that can also be changed, that are also changing. And but yes, it's I find it remarkable myself that we're in Finland. We have these statistics, and that we can't maintain in work. But on the other hand, I would also say that Finland, we have other issues or areas where we can be better when it comes to child support, for example, or parental leave. That we here also we are maybe a bit left behind the other Nordic countries when it comes to parental leave, and who stays at home as the caregiver and stays out of the labor market. So there's a gender divide there when it comes to work and the length of the career also.
It's an interesting thing when having intergenerational discussions in Finland and speaking to older citizens, especially those who are about to leave the work market and the workplace. Very many people focus on, so how long do you have until retirement, and when do you get to retire, and so forth. But I've understood that in Sweden, this is not a topic for discussion, and Swedes apparently stay a bit longer in the workforce as well. Barbro, how come people are more positive to working as older citizens compared to us, for instance? Any thoughts on this?
Yes, I mean, people are individuals. Some want to leave work when they are 61, 62. Others want to go on as long as they can. And the debate now is around how can we open the doors for those who want to work and can work longer, and not to, at the moment we have a legislation that you have to stay at work until you are 68. But I mean, with the average length of life you have, you will live up in your 80s, and you shouldn't stop people who want to stay working, because our welfare system needs people to go on. And what we see now, there are teachers, physicians, also lumbermen, people plumbing and so on, go on to an increasing extent. It's because they have jobs which they like, they feel needed. To feel needed in society is an important health matter. WHO has said that not to feel needed in society is a real health risk. So we more discuss now how to open the doors, and there ageism and age discrimination comes in, because all sorts of rules and legislation actually prevents people to go on. So the debate is now more around how can we get rid of the obstacles in the way for those who want to work longer, but at the same time accept that some don't want or cannot want, and then we have to have a pension system taking care of that. And now our pension system builds on how much your life income, so to speak. And of course, do you leave early, your pension will be rather low. And if you have to leave early because you actually can't work longer, how to deal with their economical problems. So there is a challenge now for our pension system, how to cope with those with very low pensions, and how to open the doors for those who want to work for up in their years.
If I, Barbro, may ask a slightly personal question. According to your Wikipedia page, you were born in 1933, which, according to my math, means that you would have been eligible for retirement and pension quite a few years ago, but you've stayed in the work life as an MP. what keeps you going? What motivates you to stay in the workforce?
Of course, it's meaningful, and I can see that as a politician, I can change things. I can change together with others, come up with my ideas how to change legislation in various fields. So that keeps me going. But I have to accept that some don't have that challenging, inspiring task as I have, and therefore don't want to go on. We have to see to it that people are individuals. In Sweden, during the 20th century, older people became a sort of a collective, thought to be the same, everyone wanting the same. That's not true. Some want to leave their homes, move into something more convenient. Some want to stay as long as they live. Some like some kind of food, others other kind of food, so on. And this is true also with work. So we have to have a flexible system, allowing people to make free choices.
We're going to talk a bit more about that in just a second when we reach the third segment. But I would still like to ask a question from GianMarco about pensions and retirement in Italy. And reading the report, Aging in Europe from North to South, one of the things that was brought to my attention when it comes to aging and retirement and pensions in Italy is that you have two systems, almost two castes, because you have you have two separate aging populations in Italy. Would you, GianMarco, care to elaborate and tell us about that?
I'm sorry, you mean like one certain age for male and the other for female? Is that the question?
No, the native and the immigrant status aging population.
Oh yeah, okay. So in general terms, you're not referring to the pension system, actually. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So there, given the important immigrant situation in Italy, there's a high number of immigrants in Italy, and let me give you some data, actually, which is, so for example, yeah, the number of foreign residents in Italy is more than 5 million, and so it's almost the 10% of the entire population. So obviously, since this percentage has, well, there is a double, let's say double, as you say, a double aging population, and there will be probably in the future some challenges in facing this different shares of the population. This is because we have to consider that Italy currently is one of the countries in the world that has population composed by older generations. So, and while actually the immigrants are in their central age, so for example, from 30 to 50 years old. So there will be a sort of disbalance in the future, because while the Italian population of young people is currently, well, Italy is one of the lowest, so it is one of the highest ranking countries in terms of older generation, but it's one of the lowest ranking countries in terms of birth rate. So basically, there will be a disequilibrium in the future between these two generations, because on one hand, we have a low natality of native Italian residents, and on the other hand, we have a growing population of immigrants that are currently in their, let's say, 40s or 50s or 30s. So this is an issue that today is probably not considered as much as it should be, because we will have a future situation in which there will be such a disbalancing. Another issue, please allow me to say this, is for the current young Italian generations in terms of the pension system. This is another flaw, for example, in Italy. Public debate does not focus that much on the current pension system for the current older generation, but it is a concern for the future older generation to be. So what I'm saying is that today's, the young generation that today is in Italy, tomorrow will be probably in trouble in terms of pension system, because unemployment rate is very high. the salary is not that high. And so this is another issue that will have to be challenged in the future by the policymakers, because on one hand, we have this, let's say, two sides, aging population. On the other hand, we have also the fact that the Italian young generation of today will be in trouble for the pension of tomorrow. So I say that this is not the ideal situation, or at least there's some confusion that has to be addressed, and then probably is not addressed and tackled as much as it should be.
What would a potential solution to this problem be? You have 30 seconds.
Well, 30 seconds. I don't know if to offer a solution in 30 seconds to this, obviously, because it's a structural solution. It comes to the whole market, the labor market. That's the thing. The labor market has to be redetermined and be proactive and functional to the future, which is something that in Italy today is not absolutely like that. So that would be a solution, restarting from the ground, actually, and proactively address the issue rather than trying to cope with it in the future when it might be too late. It's a prevention approach.
Thank you, GianMarco, and thank you also for bringing us to our third and final topic for this discussion. We have approximately 20 minutes left, and I will leave some time for Q&A. I can see in the comments that there are a lot of questions and comments and thoughts on these important topics that we are discussing today. But first, let us talk about healthy aging. And this is something that I know that Dr. Anna Forsman is specialized in and has focused on a lot in her research. So Anna, what exactly is healthy aging, and how do we obtain it?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Well, healthy aging, from my point of view, I would say that the most important thing is to really nuance the approach of what healthy aging is. And this is something we try to do in the report as well, that we acknowledge the various factors that really support healthy aging. And we know that, yes, healthy aging, it's about physical health and it's about physical activity and functionality, absolutely. And this is a very traditional measurement when it comes to older people and health, that we talk about functionality and maybe also dysfunctionality. But we know also that healthy aging is also about mental health, mental well-being, the subjective experiences in everyday life. How do you experience your life situation? Do you feel good in your everyday life? And also about social determinants, social relationships, and of course, also the social environment and social security factors that we also talked about now earlier today. But I would say that this is very important to nuance the approach of what healthy aging is, and also to chive in here in the comment made by Barbro that we are individuals, so we don't have one success model or one equation for what the healthy aging really is to the older person, but we need to have various approaches to safeguard healthy aging in various parts of Europe and also in various parts of the older adult population and these segments.
Talking about this and working on another report on aging in the 2020s with you, we talked a lot about the fact that as a society, we often view citizens age 65 or older as one gray mass, but these are very different. And there was a comment in the chat as well on the fact that an individual can be 65 and their parents can be alive and up in their 90s. And somebody who is 90 plus has different needs, different wants, different thoughts than somebody in who is 65 plus. How can we diversify this? How can we, as a society, learn to afford these people this luxury of being individuals? How can we change?
Well, I think it comes down to the attitudes and knowledge, really. What is aging, and to acknowledge that we all age, and that we have various experiences from our previous life events, and that we all carried our luggage, and some of us carry a very, very burdensome luggage, and some carry very light luggage, and that will affect our experiences when it comes to the later parts of life, and maybe also to make sure that aging is not something negative. When we talk about aging, that we talk about aging in positive terms, and also through that trying to nuance how we look at healthy aging, because healthy aging in itself, the concept is a bit counterproductive in that sense that it sounds a bit holistic or very that it's something that you need to achieve, that only people that have very good health and very good well-being, that they have achieved this goal of healthy aging. But I would prefer to talk about maybe optimal aging instead, that we all have our prerequisites and our social circumstances that will affect how we are experiencing our later parts of life. But to support these various experiences and various outcomes when it comes to healthy aging and well-being in later life.
Talking about these issues, Barbro, may I say that you're probably the one who has most experience in aging from this group on this panel. What kind of thoughts do Anna's words wake in you?
Yes, we are individuals. So, and some have disabilities, some not. And I think it's very important to learn how to cope with disabilities. When I read the Green Book from EU here, I can see an illustration with a walking thing, which has no wheels, how the rolling frame can change your life, freedom, how to walk when your feet and knees are not the same as they used to be, and so on. But my main point is that you must feel that you are part of society, you are part of a social network. And this has been very, very obvious during this pandemic, when in Sweden, all 70 plus were asked a year ago to stay home, don't go out, keep isolated. This virus is a lethal thing. And what has happened to people who have kept themselves isolated for a year, this was also true for those in care homes. What it has meant not to have a social network and to be kept indoors. People started to ask, why live now? I'm not needed to anyone. The only thing I should do is to keep myself isolated, not to get infected, not to be needed a bed in hospital. And I think we are in the midst of following up what has happened here. And of course, this comes true also when you are not in an epidemic, but you see very few people. I think to have a good social network according to your wishes is maybe the most important thing. Then it's to prevent falls and to eat food which is good for you and so on. And medication should be optimal, not over medication and so on. There's much to do there. But I think the basic thing is that you feel it's worth living than to feel needed, long for tomorrow to see what is happening there. And a short thing is to have a contact with living body, so to speak, is that when we weren't allowed to visit in care homes, so you couldn't see your husband or wife, but in care homes where there was a cat, the positive things to have a cat jumping up in your knee, sending warmth, you almost cry. So we shouldn't have this system of not allow visitors in care homes during the next pandemic. We must organize it differently to keep the health and life quality of people staying there. Long answer on a short question.
Good answer, I'd say. One follow-up on this. Do you feel that the pandemic has changed how society views 70 plus members of society when it comes to isolation and these sort of things?
Yes, I think that is a positive thing with this pandemic. It has brought up a number of questions concerning older people, which were not looked into really or organized the way they should. So I do hope that all this experience from this pandemic, we should use it and improve a number of things. Especially in care of older people, but also to keep healthy. What can you do as long as possible during your life so that this time in care homes becomes as short as possible?
Thank you. And not to sound stereotypical, but in the Nordics, we maybe have a feeling that when we look at aging in the southern part of Europe, especially in Italy, we picture a family, a multi-generational family led by a nonna, the matriarch of the family, who sees that everybody is well, who sees to it that there's food on the table, and there are long walks in the sunset, red wine, and good bread. This is also something that the Italian chapter of this book covers. GianMarco, would you like to confirm this this myth of happy and healthy aging in Italy?
Well, let me say that it's not really a stereotypical situation, but it's actually the true one, mostly. I mean, it's not 100% as everything. Nothing is 100% totally. But basically, there is this huge, let's say, composition of huge families with the nonna, like a matriarchal figure, as well as the nonno, like this patriarchal figure, making sure that you ate everything, that that you had lunch and you had dinner and you had your wine. So there is basically what can look like a stereotype is actually a cultural way that in Italy we have. Well, this obviously I cannot explain the reasons why there is this kind of culture. It's something that is grounded and embedded in our countries in centuries. But basically, it's one of the point of strengths that maybe we have in Italy in this regard, because both the composition of the diet, since according to some data, I don't know if it is the Eurostat, please allow me to check. No, the Bloomberg Global Health Index points out Italy as the second healthiest country in the world. And basically this helps in the process of aging, because the composition of the Mediterranean diet, it's low fat, and obviously it's the good fat. And this is not my area of expertise, and I'm speaking also on the behalf of Dr. Felix Strollo, who participated in writing the article of the publication in relation to the medical on the field of the medical. But so yeah, basically the composition of the Mediterranean diet and of the Italian diet helps this process, because it helps in keeping in health. This plus this image of long walks with glasses of wine and all together and loving each other, it's something that is true. The idea of family in Italy is very strong, as we can all see in movies from everywhere, not only from Italy. There is this unity of family members. Obviously, as I said, there are exceptions, because there are exceptions everywhere. But the concept of family is very important here. So in the most of the times, the aging population is always accompanied, let's say that, by their sons and their nephews, and there are big lunches and big dinners mostly every week. I know this sounds maybe weird or maybe it's a talkative approach, but I think that as talkative as it might be, this approach is essential in this field, in this regard, because it is a big support, also big psychological support in the aging process. So yeah, Italy on this point is it's surely a point of strength in our country.
Thank you for your thoughts. And finally, Michael, how is the situation in Austria? What is healthy aging in Austria right now? And what are your thoughts on the Nordic and the Southern models here?
Yeah, thank you. If I may a bit address the situation in Austria, also a bit connected to the labor market. So we have a bit strange situation in Austria, or not strange, it's also logical from what we do or what we don't do. And of course, we're relatively good in overall life expectancy, but we're relatively bad in healthy life expectancy. And I think this has also to do with this Austrian tradition on repair medicine. So in most cases, we wait and see unless you have severe conditions, and then we try to treat you. And I think the focus should be much more on prevention and on secondary prevention, because we still also see, as I said already, from the still relatively high inflow into invalidity pensions, and the most sicknesses you apply for invalidity pension is, on the one hand, psychological diseases, and on the other hand, problems with the skeleton. And I think both diseases, or for both type of sicknesses, you could do a lot with some kind of prevention. And it also seems that as many women are affected by these psychological diseases, maybe one problem is also the lack of good measures for the reconciliation of work and family life, which really puts a double burden on women. And maybe this is also some kind of an outcome that then this high inflow in invalidity pension. And the last thing I wanted to say, but still we are also relatively good on the way with some kind of policy measures. So about 10 years ago, the measure Fit to Work was introduced, which both supports, on the one hand, employees, but also employers. So it's a kind of a counseling service and gives advice. And here the goal is that you don't wait too long. So you already act when the first health problems occur. And then you try to look, can, for example, the employee change something in his or her personal behavior? Can the workplace somehow adapt it, for example, and to related to this skeleton problems is that maybe you can stand while you do your work on the desk and not sit. So this also could help a lot in preventing. But of course, then you also have these counseling services on if it might also be worse to stop with your current job because it's too demanding, or too it puts you too much on health risk, and then maybe you change your job. But also on the same way that also the employers are somehow that they also can take into account these counseling services and also think of how they can adapt the workplaces, how they can adapt the organization of work so that their employees still stay healthy, that they can work longer and also stay longer in the enterprise.
Thank you very much. These three topics, digitalization, pensions and retirement, and healthy aging, they are the main focus of the report, Aging in Europe from North to South, which we have here. You can, of course, find this report and the podcast on these topics on agingineurope.eu. Our time is almost up, but I would like to open up the floor for questions from the audience, comments, thoughts that this has awoken. Please raise your hand and have your camera ready as well. We'd love to see you because there are participants from a lot of countries. This is almost like the Eurovision Song Contest. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and I would gladly give you the microphone. Let me see here, because there I can see that there have been very interesting question, comments in the chat as well. Anybody? Would anybody like to ask a question from the panel, the experts or the policymakers? Otherwise, I'm going to assume that we have effectively covered each topic of this discussion. All right, going once, going twice. Nope, I can't see any questions from the audience. It seems that we have covered everything. I would like to say thank you very much. Tack så mycket, vielen Dank, and grazie mille to our policymaker and our participants. Today we have had Anna Forsman here in the studio in Vasa in Finland. We had Barbro Westerholm, MP for the Swedish Riksdag in Sweden. I'm guessing Stockholm, but I'm not sure. We have Michael Fuchs with us from Vienna in Austria, and GianMarco Bovenzi from Rome, if I'm not mistaken, in Italy. At this point, I say thank you very much for participating. Thank you for a very interesting discussion, and please go to agingineurope.eu. You can find the report, the podcast on this topic, and of course, a lot more on this report there. I wish you a really great day, and see you again at the next ELF event.